Welcome back to Dr. Supercoach. In this video, I'll be discussing the upcoming captaincy selections for round 20, coming right up. How's it going, guys? It's JB from Dr. Supercoach, and if this is your first appointment here, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the upcoming updates we have. I think we're going to start branching out a little bit towards the end of the year and do some different content, so that is one to watch as well. Now, obviously, today's episode is focused again on the captaincy decisions for the upcoming week. We've only got about a month left of the season, so not many more captaincy calls to hit, and probably none more difficult than this round. There are a lot of good captaincy options, none that I would say are safe enough to lock yourself out of a 120 and roll the dice. I probably wouldn't ever advise to do that. 118, 119 plus, and I'm all aboard. But this week, I think there are a lot of options to discuss and to consider. I think there are going to be a lot of guys who people come out of this video thinking, absolutely, I can understand how that player is going to score really well. So we start off with Collingwood versus Carlton on the Friday night there, and we're going to start off with a very good vice captaincy option straight off the bat. Nick Dacos has been a very good vice captaincy option all season long. I think maybe a little bit ignored. The reasoning, I think actually probably sits around these two games right here, the 72 and the 81 in which he was tagged. I did say last week that he would get tagged by Willem Drew quite well this week coming up, or this week just gone. He did only score 100 against Carlton. People might see that and think, oh no, this is another tag risk game. He actually wasn't tagged at all in that game. He just had a probably one of his, if not his worst game of the year, completely unaffected by any opposition player. So I don't expect that to continue at the MCG in his form as a midfielder. I fully expect him to run free, and worst case scenario, if a George Hewitt or Ed Kerno, who I don't expect to go through the CBAs, if someone sits on him, I still expect him to score a pretty decent score, but that's why he's our VC. If he was our captain, I might have those tag concerns a little bit more. But for this one, even if Carlton do send someone to him, we've got a lot of people to roll the dice on for the skipper, and his upside is just incredible. There's so many captainable scores this year, and the high ceiling is high. So, he doesn't discriminate whether it's opponent or ground or venue. He doesn't discriminate as to where the big scores come from, and I think he's just a free option to throw the vice captaincy on. And just hope that we get one of his big 120 plus scores, which we generally do from Nick Dacos. He's becoming very reliable. Next game of the round, we have another good vice captaincy option. It's vice captaincy or captaincy, I guess. So the form of Tom Stewart is very good, and he's been starting a couple of CBAs late in the game, and then sort of drifting down back. It is an unbelievable role, just drifting to be loose in defence. I think Dawson does it towards the end of some of Crow's games as well. But this is really just a form shout. We saw Fremantle actually held him to a 91. They're very restrictive against half backmen, even if there's no actual rhyme or reason to it. There's no tagger that goes out, but they are very restrictive. So in terms of a vice captaincy, if you don't like Nick Dacos, I can understand going Tom Stewart, but he, for me, is not a captaincy option. You then look at the Brayshaws and the Luke Ryans and Sarongs of Fremantle. None of them, in my opinion, are worth the VC or the C in terms of ceiling this week. So I'm happy to pass on all of those guys. Now, we have Tim English versus Kieran Briggs. So obviously Kieran Briggs, huge cat. No, it's Tim English, of course. Again, we're going to discuss this man as we do every single week. What's the 5 round? 139, 3 round 145. The form is unbelievable. It's out of this world. That is, we're looking at 5 captaincy scores in a row, 6 out of the last 7, with a few of them being astronomical. If you have Tim English, going Nick Dacos into Tim English is super, super easy. If you don't have Tim English, even Bontempelli against GWS, I don't think they're a restrictive midfield team. I think some people think they are, but I'm not quite sure. So they had Gold Coast last week. Bit tough in a 40-point flogging, but I don't think anyone did particularly well. Crows the week before. So did anyone of these lads score well against GWS? 151 from Laird, I would consider pretty good. 126 from Dawson. So I don't think they're particularly restrictive in the midfield. And for that reason, I think Bontempelli is an incredible captaincy option as well. Right now, Nick Dacos into Bont or English, I think is a very, very good option, very good and safe. I'd be very surprised if you get no good captaincy scores between those two options. I would have English above Bontempelli again this week. We need Bontempelli to play a weak midfield like against Richmond for me to actually change my tune on the Bont versus English debate, but I don't want to give any spoilers away, of course, as people don't want those spoilers. The next game of the round gives us another huge captaincy decision. I think Josh Dunkley against Gold Coast. I shouted this the first time that they were up against Gold Coast this season, and I'm going to shout it again. He started slow in his return, ended up with a 115, still salvaged a very good score with about 80 points in a 10-minute span. Incredible stuff. He scored, was it 160? 153 against Gold Coast, and it started a real run of good captaincy scores for him. So I don't think anything's going to change in this one. I think he's super captainable. Now that he's had that return game, which I tend to avoid, I think he's absolutely up for grabs as a captaincy option. Lachie Neale, I don't know. I feel like his season, it's been very up and down. He had a good 4-week period in there. But besides that, really, he's only had a few good scores worthy of a big VC or C. I did pick him. I think I picked him off in that North. No, I didn't own him in that North Melbourne game. I think I've captained him once this year. Of course, it was against West Coast. But besides that, I've struggled to pin down where the big scores are going to come from with Lachie Neale. It is likely he does go well, but I think Dunkley is just such an easy captaincy decision over him, and I would prefer either of the Bulldogs over Lachie Neale. There is a discussion as to either of the Bulldogs versus Dunkley, and I think that's really going to be a coach-by-coach type of vibe, but as per usual, I'll rank them towards the end of the video. Now, Essendon versus Sydney, I think Sydney's midfield is incredibly easy to score against. I really do like Zach Merritt as a POD captaincy option. Has he played Sydney this year? Oh, I just hiccuped. No, they haven't. This is so weird when they don't play the team until the very end of the season. All right, well, no form on Zach Merritt against Sydney, but again, at Marvel Stadium, I do really think Sydney are an easy team to score against. I don't think a tag comes up in this one. So again, I think that's a very good captaincy option. I'm going to have to rank these guys. Showdown is just a must avoid. I think players like Rosie typically scores really well in showdowns. Players like Butters typically score really well at Adelaide Oval, so does Den Houston, but Laird coming back from a bit of a shoulder complaint, or hopefully coming back from that. Dawson kicking goals after the siren against Port for fun. It is too tough to predict anything in that game, so just avoid it completely. Absolutely no captainable option in this. I know Hawthorn are going to miss Reeves, but I think Meek is still fit. So whatever's going on there, Royal Marshall, it doesn't put him in contention for me. And Jack Steele is far too unpredictable this year. James Sicily, St Kilda are a team who give up big scores to defenders. Let's see who's played against St Kilda. Has Tom Stewart not played against St Kilda? Am I going blind? Does he play them? He plays them in round 23. Surely that's not the only game. Did he miss a game? Round 2. Did they play him in round 2? Don't tell me that they've somehow played them in round 2 and he's missed that one game. I'm really sidetracking here. I can't even see it on the fixture. No, they played Carlton in round 2. Okay, I don't know what's happened there. He wasn't playing in defence. What did Luke Ryan score against St Kilda? 171 in round 1. Okay, well that definitely supports my point. Doherty's actually a midfielder now. Oh Lord. How can I not have a sort of floating halfback player to look at as an option here? Sicily, has he played St Kilda this year? Yes, for a 172. So that is my 2-game sample size, a 171 and a 172 against St Kilda. Sicily is playing St Kilda twice in 5 matches. Stuart hasn't played him yet this year. Incredible scenes. Interesting. So I think, again, we're talking about someone who is captainable. However, Ross Lyon, if you do believe anything he said that they're apparently going to put a lot of work into Sicily this week. With that quote alone, it's probably not worth it. In another week, I would say, yeah, just take on Ross Lyon and back Sicily. But in a week where we've got so many good options already, I'm happy to just let this one slide. Now, Richmond versus Melbourne, Petrarca, we don't know what role he's going to play. And I don't think... I know Taranto probably scores well in this game, but look at the slide that he's on at the moment. 3 sub-tons from the last 4. He is tapering off a little bit, absolutely uncaptainable in this form. And then we've got North Melbourne versus West Coast. Look, I think LDU is probably going to go absolutely bananas in this one. And that's it. That's the whole statement. So if you do have LDU, I can understand if you're losing your matchup or something, or you think you need this POD captain, which I don't think should even exist in your mind at all. But I suppose specifically league related, if you want to make that change and go for a high ceiling guy, I think LDU could absolutely do discussing things to West Coast. So right now I'm heavily on Nick Dacos. He's a 10 out of 10 vice captaincy option for me. So is Tim English, 10 out of 10 captaincy option for me. I can completely understand if you wanted to go Bulldog into Lion and just pass Nick Dacos completely. Maybe you think that he's going to get tagged or something. I understand it, because we've got probably 4 10 out of 10 options here. Between these, if I had to give anyone a 9 to split them up at all, it would probably be Josh Dunkley, just because he's only a week back from the injury, and this is being really nitpicky, but look, Bont had calf strapping as well. There's risk everywhere in the game. It is being very nitpicky, but I'm going to say Dacos into English, absolutely. If you have that combination, just lock it in, please. Don't even think twice about it. If you don't have English, then absolutely Bontempelli. If you have Bontempelli and Dunkley, then it's probably going to be more of a coin flip for you. But honestly, I don't think you can pick wrong. I just look at Bont, and I say this every single week. There's a 114 against Fremantle, a 113 against Geelong, a couple of 112s in there. Absolutely pathetic from Bont. And besides that, we have to go back to round 3 to find his first captaincy score that is really, really disgusting. Besides that, it has been absolutely acceptable captaincy scores. And let's not get it twisted. Vice captaincy scores, 120 plus. You look for those big scores, but as a captain, that means your vice captain has failed to the point where they've gone 115 or below. Anything above 110 is still a passable option. You've taken a punt on something bigger. You only lose 5 points in the meantime with anything 110 plus. Bontempelli has just done that all season long. So I'm going to say Nick into Tim. Bont if you don't know Tim, and if you really, really want to get funky for some reason, then you can use Dunkley if you want. If you want to get really, really, really funky, you can use LDU. But in another week, I think Zerrett would be my captain, but not with the options presented. That's going to do it for another week of the captaincy selections. I hope you guys did enjoy. If I did miss out on anyone, please comment down below. There are certain trends that are really niche in the game that I have missed out on before. So if you've identified something like that, please do comment down below and let me know, and I'll tweet about it or I'll respond and just sort of give my thoughts on it. Thanks everyone for tuning in. You can obviously support us via our Patreon link down below or our merchandise link. Anything that you can do is much appreciated. Shout out to everyone who have still watched the videos to this point. Appreciate you all, and I'll catch you next week.